You mentioned Egypt. Without giving too much detail, or really any detail at all, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he had a positive conversation with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on the phone. He said the call went very well and that the two discussed issues, including Gaza and the U.S. attacks on Yemen. Now, joining us to break this down is Dalia Ziana, an Egyptian scholar and senior fellow at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us this evening once again. So, hearing what Trump said about the call, what do you expect has actually been discussed and said here?
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I'll tell you not only what I expect, but what I've also heard behind the closed doors from people who are close to the decision makers in Egypt, whom I trust. So the call is mainly was not about Gaza as much as it was about the Houthis and the Horn of Africa. It seems that President Trump is now trying to find other locations where he can have attacks on the Houthis without getting Arab countries involved. I mean by that, Arab Gulf countries in particular, who we've also heard yesterday and the day before that they made sent indirect messages to the Houthis that we are not going to open our country to be used by American troops to attack you. Of course, they are saying this not because they love the Houthis. Of course, they know the Houthis are their enemies, but they don't want to be under the attack of the Houthis or the attack of Iran because they are allowing the American troops to operate from their lands. So right now, the American troops or the American strategy to attack the Houthis need a different platform to attack from. And the easiest and the closest geographic platform is the Horn of Africa. Both Egypt and the United States have a military presence in the Horn of Africa, particularly in Somalia. The U.S. has been there for many, many years. It has a base there. And this base is basically fighting against terrorism of the Somali terrorist organizations and the organizations wreaking havoc in North Africa, in the Horn of Africa, right. But also Egypt recently sent troops in January in particular to Somalia, if you remember, more than 1,000 troops within the African Union support and stabilization mission. And of course, Egypt had other intentions from sending these troops. Part of it has to do with the crisis we have with Ethiopia over the Nile River. But actually now it seems that these troops, the Egyptian troops, in cooperation with perhaps the American troops, perhaps they are going to coordinate on the attacks or enhancing the American attacks on the Houthis somehow. Also, Egypt has played a role before in intercepting the missiles fired by the Houthis on the Red Sea, either the ones that were directed at Egyptian land or at Israeli land, because at the end of the day, two neighbors are, their security is so interdependent.
Right. So, okay, we've got a variety of issues here. We've got the Horn of Africa, we've got the Houthis. But if you look at the relationship between Cairo and Washington recently, it's had a few bumps, especially since the new administration. Let's put it that way. How would you describe the relationship as it is right now, especially with the focus on Gaza?
It's a good point you mentioned, because actually I think it is kind of mouse and cat relationship. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. Of course, President al-Sisi, when President Trump came in power, he was one of the first to congratulate him, and he was expecting that he's going to bring or allow somehow the Egyptian leadership to do some things that the Biden administration did not allow them to do, especially when it comes, to issues related to Gaza and going away with what is the situation in Gaza. But of course, right now we can see very diverse visions, divergent, I would say, very different visions between the U.S. administration and the Egyptian political leadership over Gaza and over what should be happening in Gaza. And thus, they have their disagreement in this regard, and it will continue to be the case. However, today, something really interesting happened in the Egyptian media following the phone calls that happened yesterday between President Trump and President al-Sisi. they changed the language they are using, describing the people in Gaza. Before, the word used was the Palestinian citizens in Gaza, المواطن الفلسطيني. Now they are using the word المواطن الغزاوي, the Gazan citizen, which is, I find it very, very interesting, because it seems to me perhaps it could be one step towards isolating Gazans from the Palestinian cause, which Egypt is very much concerned with for ideological reasons. And so they can easily, maybe this paves the way for the future. In the near future, we see Egypt saying that it's okay to take the Gazans out, and this will not hurt the Palestinian cause. This is my guess, my expectation. Yeah.
All right, Dalia Ziada, thank you so much for your input and for this interesting twist here at the end. We're going to be watching that, of course.